This is a sermon on the Parshat of Bo for Jami's Mental Health Shabbat. I'm Rabbi Charley Baginsky. It's funny, isn't it, how at the edge of winter, many of us have romantic notions of the oncoming season, log fires, mulled wine, watching television buried under blankets. Yet as soon as the winter has really settled, the reality seems as far from the romantic ideal as possible. Rain replaces crisp snow, mulled wine is swapped with strong coffee, and rather than remaining under the blankets, we have to force ourselves out of bed and into the cold and wet that faces us outside. I'm currently struggling with the dark. When I get up in the morning, it's dark. When I turn away from the computer, it's dark. And even when I escape to the outside during the day, it's dark. The clouds above filling the sky, grey and ominous. And yet, darkness is part of the natural order of things, even present right at the beginning of creation. The earth was unformed and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and God separated the light from darkness. Darkness isn't destroyed, but rather separated from light, so that it can have its own place. Indeed, we all know that the absence of light can designate a time for rest. It can mean the end to the glare of the computer screen, the end to checking email and endless Zoom calls. It can signify a chance to close our eyes, take a deep breath, and recoup. Those moments can bring self-awareness and comfort. In the Parshat of Bo, we are faced with darkness around every corner. Firstly, it's the penultimate plague to befall the Egyptians. The darkness they suffer is extreme and shows the power of the dark to create fear and terror. It affects the people's mental health and can even cause physical paralysis. As the text tells us, then the Eternal said to Moses, "Hold out your arm towards the sky that there may be darkness upon the land of Egypt, a darkness that can be touched." And so Moses held out his arm towards the sky, and thick darkness descended upon the land of Egypt for 3 days. People could not see one another, and for 3 days no one could get up from where they were. Maimonides comments that the darkness was so thick and so fog-like that it extinguished all the lamps, and there could be no fire at all. No light. There was no way of seeing up nor down, no way of seeing other people or even oneself. Therefore, the Egyptians were made blind and rooted to the ground in inaction. In the same way as I'm often overwhelmed by the winter, I'm often overwhelmed by our world. But hidden in this portion is a message that also gives me hope. There's a midrash that tells us that all the children of Israel had light in their dwelling. It does not say in the land of Goshen where they lived, but rather in their dwellings. This is to show, says the midrash, that wherever a Jew went, light went with them and illuminated everything. The midrash, I think, is trying to tell us that Israelites had the power to bring light into dark places, to be a light unto the nations. We may struggle with this term, but there is no better time of the year than now to think about the potential we have to bring light into others' lives. Tradition tells us that we all have a spark of light within us, which is part of the divine. This Shabbat is Mental Health Awareness Shabbat, launched by Jami. It's an opportunity to focus our minds on thinking about looking after our own mental health and being sensitive to the mental health of others, as well as raising awareness of mental health and illness in the local and wider community. So this year, more than ever, in the midst of a pandemic, this is a pressing need. Bringing light can take all shapes and forms, from listening to encouraging participation in many of the support arenas within the Jewish community. Many of the physical doors may have closed, but communities and Jewish networks remain actively open. We can still find a multiplicity of ways to connect. At the end of Shabbat, tradition dictates that we light a braided candle to illuminate the night. It's supposed to help us see through the dark that brought the end of Shabbat and to guide us into a new week. But this Shabbat, let's see that twisted candle, bringing together many strands as one as our guide, identifying the people who fill our lives with light, or who need us to bring light into their darkness. Shabbat Shalom.